Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, King Dio, Lauren Frey, and the upcoming Jaw the Dragon. So, I have recently acquired a brand new gaming laptop, a computer that can run every AAA game on Steam. It is good enough to run everything. Looks great. Really, really happy with it, actually. Really enjoying it so far. I spent last night playing like Portal, Portal 2, Tales of Symphonia, and eventually, once the download was complete, Horizon Zero Dawn, or as I quickly began to call it during my live stream, Horizon Mini Yawns, because boy, is this game boring. I wish I actually stopped what I was doing and made a video to rant about it, like before I went to bed last night because I was legitimately upset. Like long before my 3 hour playtime was over, I thought the game was boring. I thought it had a bad story. I didn't like the characters. I thought the setting was more flash and substance. I found myself tuning out of this one long before I got out of the opening acts, which takes about 3 hours. Like when I look back in games that take that long to get started, stuff like Kingdom Hearts 2, stuff like maybe Final Fantasy 10, like I just think to myself that like they could have been better paced. Like they spent all this time building up absolutely nothing because even within this opening act, right? There are all these like contradicting actions and contradicting plot points that don't make a whole lot of sense, that just kind of fall fall apart if you think about them even a little bit. And I kind of talked about a lot of this on stream, but I really wanted to take a couple of minutes to reflect on my experience with Horizon Mini Yawn. So we begin the game with this sort of introduction sequence where Aloy, baby Aloy, Chibi Aloy, I suppose, since this is an anime channel, Chibi Aloy is being taken to be blessed by the High Matriarch Tirsa, by her surrogate father, Roast, a man who lives on the outskirts of the Nora tribe, and an outcast. We never learn why he's outcast. We learn why Aloy herself is outcast a lot earlier on than I would have expected. But uh, these characters are essentially outcast from the tribe for this entire opening segment. Like they're treated by shit by everyone. They're not allowed to trade. They're not allowed to interact with other people. They're not allowed to do anything in town. Like Aloy has to spend her entire childhood like training to win the proving and prove her worth. It doesn't make any sense, especially when you learn exactly why Aloy has been outcast, why she's been driven out, why she's been forced to live this way and treated like shit by everyone. And the answer to that is essentially for no reason. It's kind of like it reminds me a lot of Naruto, right? In the sense where like it has this concept of this person who's treated like shit like society, who's kind of like driven away from their peers, driven away from people like them because of something that happened in their distant past, like related to their birth. In Naruto's case, that made perfect sense because like he's a Jinchuruki. He has the nine tails, the QB inside of him. He's legitimately very dangerous. And it kind of makes sense that like the population would kind of treat him like shit, even though the show itself seems to indicate that Naruto is more disliked because he's an annoying little shit rather than the demon. Again, like Naruto isn't a good story either, but Horizon Zero Dawn is somehow worse in the sense where Aloy, at 6 years old, is kind of performing at a higher level than the grown adults around her, particularly her foster father Rose. It's really weird how they introduce this with Aloy kind of being taught the ropes. You kind of go through this like extended tutorial, this section where like you're playing as a kid, and not only do you hunt like giant raptor dinosaur, like robot dinosaurs with like machine like precision. Like I wasn't killing squirrels at her age, for the record. she's somehow able to like take down these giant robot dinosaurs. She's able to like figure out how to sneak past them. Like she's able to like do all this crazy shit at like 7 years old, and it comes off like she's a complete Mary Sue. Like legit, real talk. Aloy must be the biggest Mary Sue I've seen in any modern video game ever. I can't think of anyone who's pissed me off more. Like I can't think of any protagonist I would consider a Mary Sue in this way, because the game really wants you to think that Aloy is hot shit. They want you to think she's she's mature, she's funny, she's beautiful, she has all this stuff going for her, but she's treated like shit. Like they're trying to make you really care about this girl and what she's going through, but it really makes no sense, right? Like there's this bit where like she discovers this ancient piece of technology, the focus, and she learns the interface with it, and suddenly she has the ability to track the movements of robots, like how they patrol across the open world, which doesn't make any sense to me. It just like the focus can just do that. She just managed to figure this thing out. Like it still works after all this time, which is another thing that people don't really don't talk about. Like it is just so contrived. So many aspects of this, and when you finally get to the proving as an adult, once you go through like a little bit of a taste of the open world where you're just walking from point to point, just interacting with NPCs, watching endless cutscenes of this boring fucking story, like introducing characters that don't matter, that aren't interesting, that don't contribute a lot to the plot, who just kind of fall off by the wayside like very quickly. Like there's this character, Bast, which I guess must be short for bastard, because he is like a stereotypical 80s bully. Like that's the joke that someone came up with on stream, is that this motherfucker like exists only to bully Aloy. That's the only reason this character exists, is that like he exists to kind of just bully the shit out of her, to treat her like shit. And it's so over the top and ridiculous. Like this guy's coming up to her as like a grown man, like bragging about how he hit her in the rock as a child. Like I I don't I don't even remember like the names of kids I've thrown rocks at, or who have thrown rocks at me, right? Like it's not something I dwell on, right? Like kids do that, right? But like it's not something like this guy was treating it like it's like one of his like life's greatest accomplishments. Like, oh man, I hit Aloy, I hit the outcast in the head. She still has that scar, and like first of all, I don't think she does. Like I looked at the character model, and it looks like she doesn't. It's just such a weird plot point. And like it leads to this Mass Effect style sequence where like you can kind of choose how to react to his bullying, and it doesn't make any sense. It's just boring. Like it all leads to the same thing. It's very Mass Effect 3 endishy. Like it doesn't amount to anything. So much so that I don't even know why they threw it in. And that leads me to the gameplay itself, which is on, like I said, more flash than substance. Like Horizon Zero Dawn seems very intent, very interested in making you think that like you're fighting these giant imposing robots with like wildly different designs, wildly different abilities, wildly different powers, but you kind of realize very early on that they have very limited range of motion, and they have very limited animations. Now, the animations are good. Like for the machines are actually pretty good. They look kind of when they're like attacking, like they kind of flail around, and they kind of behave in ways I've never seen any other creature do. And I think that's kind of the trend with Horizon, is that like everything that isn't machine related is like very trite, very amateurish, very basic. But like the machines themselves do look kind of good. They do have interesting combat mechanics that I don't think any other games have done, with like the tripwires you can set by firing your bow, and like just shooting them over and over again. Uh, like on the surface level, it actually seems pretty cool, interesting, and unique. But once you get used to it, once you like start playing the game, it really does feel like a basic third person shooter, right? With a bow and arrow. Like instead of like surviving out in the wilderness, like the Tomb Raider reboot did, you're going around like rapid fire, just firing a bow at like ungodly speed and precision and power. Like you're destroying these giant robots with a bow and arrow, and it doesn't come off as legitimate. It doesn't come off as genuine. Like these things are covered in hard metal plating. Like you would think you would need to hit like specific parts of the body to destroy them, and you kind of do. Like there are weak spots, but like you can hit any point on the machine and get like a reasonable amount of damage. Like you can use melee combat. Like yeah, like it doesn't it doesn't feel like you're fighting like a colossus. That was kind of the feel like I wanted it to go in when I saw the trailer for the first time. Is that like, oh man, is this going to be like Shadow of the Colossus where you have to attack like certain weak points to weaken these creatures? No, it's a generic third person shooter with a bow and arrow in an open world setting. Like the open world does look nice, but there's nothing to do in it. Like it feel like again, it reminds me a lot of Skyrim. Where like, holy shit! Like look at all this open space, and then you kind of realize, oh wait, there's nothing to do in that open space. Like there are materials, but they're everywhere. Like there are quests to interact with, but you can just find them on the open map, like on the quest map. Like there are merchants, like but like compared to Breath of the Wild, where they really went above and beyond and making the open world incredibly fun and diverse, like interesting to navigate with like wildly different landscapes, wildly different areas to explore, enemies everywhere, secrets to be uncovered all over the place. Uh, like Horizon Zero Dawn just does not compete. Like it really can't. Like I am no wonder this game was forgotten so quickly after launch. Like Breath of the Wild came out a week later and did everything that Horizon was trying to do better. Like I remember when people were bragging about Horizon Zero Dawn and how it has like this unique fantasy post-apocalyptic like science fiction landscape. Breath of the Wild did it better. Like I've never heard anyone bring it up before, but Breath of the Wild does have the Sheikah Slate. It does have like giant robots walking around, and the Guardians in Breath of the Wild are a lot more intimidating than anything I've seen in Horizon Zero Dawn at this point. Like it's they're more fun to fight. There's more challenge to them. There's more things you can do with them. Like Breath of the Wild stomps Horizon in essentially every aspect. Like a gameplay to cutscene ratio. When it comes to like the visual design, like the open world of Breath of the Wild is just gorgeous. When it comes to like the animations, even there are a lot of moments in this where I see like Aloy's like hair clipping through her head and just like animals going face planting into rivers and stuff like that. Like it looks bad, like it really does. Like it looks photorealistic, but that doesn't lead to a good game, right? Like it doesn't feel like a real lived-in place, right? Breath of the Wild is a video game and is proud to acknowledge itself as a video game. I I found myself just like shaking my head at so many aspects of this game to the point where if it I I honestly forgot how much I hated PlayStation exclusives. Like for the past decade or so, I've mostly been like focusing on third-party games, talking about like how SquareSoft has been going downhill, and Capcom, Konami, Sega. Like I've been going after every Doom Eternal. Like I've been going after like everything that the industry has been trying to say is better than Nintendo for over a decade. But I kind of forgot where it all began. Like I completely forgot how much I loathe the PlayStation exclusive development cycle, like how generic they are, how cookie cutter they are, how repetitive they are, how just how lazy they are, like design wise. Just there's so many things I cannot stand about the PlayStation exclusive lineup. And now that these games are coming to PC, I hope that I will be able to experience these games on a third party platform, Steam, and really start tearing into them as the overrated tripe that they are. The only reason these games ever developed the audience, the only reason The Last of Us ever became popular, the only reason that like anyone ever pretended to care about Horizon Zero Dawn, why Persona has the reputation it does, why Yakuza Zero was so beloved, it was because they started out as PlayStation exclusives. And PlayStation exclusives will always get this massive, massive push from the industry and blind fanboys. And I think Horizon Zero Dawn is a defining example of that. Like, there were people suggesting that this game could be a game of the year contender. Like, very few people like said it could ever beat Breath of the Wild. I think everyone kind of understood that Breath of the Wild was better out of the gate, but there were people who said that like Horizon should at least be nominated, and that is way too generous. Not my opinion. It's just a simple fact. Horizon Zero Dawn just couldn't compete with all of the better Nintendo Switch games coming out that year. It couldn't compete with Breath of the Wild. It couldn't compete with ARMS. It couldn't compete with like Mario Odyssey. Like there were so many better games that year. So many, in fact, that it took me a solid 5 years to come back. 5 years after release to come back, play through this game for the first time, and tell you via this YouTube video that Horizon Mini Yawns is not worth playing. It's not worth checking out. It's not worth experiencing, and above all, it's not worth getting excited for a sequel. The sequel has been out for a couple of months now, and it kind of got overshadowed by everything else that's been coming out, like the Nintendo Switch games, Elden Ring. It's kind of funny. Like this game supposedly sold 20 million units. Supposedly, the original supposedly sold 20 million units, and yet like the sequel can't even like generate any interest from the public at all. Like, I've heard nothing about the sales figures for this game, and I think it's safe to say that it bombed. I haven't checked, but um, it's easy to see why the sequel didn't do very well, because outside of like the initial hook of like, oh man, I wonder how giant robot animals got to wandering the earth, like no, that there is no audience for this. Like, no one's going to like finish this game and be like, "Oh yeah, I wonder what happens next." I don't even care what happens next in the story of the game I'm still playing, right? Like, I'm already like very tuned out. I'm already kind of like taking jabs at it and mostly focusing on like quality control and like contradictory story elements and just all around like the goofiness of it all. And it is very, very goofy. It's a game that I think has no artistic merit. It has no reason to have gotten the praise it did, and I'm very glad to see that it has languished in obscurity for the past 5 years. When Breath of the Wild 2 comes out and kind of proves itself to be a modern classic, like a new 10 out of 10 title in the Nintendo Switch library, like nobody's gonna go back and play Forbidden West and try to say that like, oh man, this is better. Like, it's not. It's just not gonna happen. Like, Horizon Mini Yawns has been completely forgotten by gamers everywhere, and for a very good reason. It is simply not a good video game.